that you can really participate actively in this session. We are now going to see what can be done with all this wisdom that has been acquired. This session is called Going Forward from EPPIC, Reflections on Policy and Practice. And we have three speakers. I think if we stick to this order, then first we have Alessandra Licordi, and she's a program officer at Unicli in Italy. Yeah. The next speaker will be Cynthia Menel Lemos. She's a scientific project officer at Chafea. Do I pronounce this right? Chafea? Okay, in Luxembourg. And basically, I think she's the project officer on this project. And finally, we have Kees Groos, who is an honorary public health consultant at the European Center for Social Welfare Policy and Research in Vienna. And he is also on the project. Advisory group. Yes. Yeah. Okay, we'll start with Alessandra.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Again, I work for a United Nations agency based in Italy. We are based in Turin, where there is a big campus, and I am in the home office. I didn't say anything for the entire EPPIC meeting because I wanted to hear what the practitioners and the team members, were focusing on, and so I kept silent. But now I would like to say a few things, and I would also like to present this little initiative that we are carrying out, and I think as is also important for the EPPIC project, and maybe we can team up on some of the aspects to see whether we can bring forward a little bit the EPPIC project and the standard guidelines. So let me first introduce very quickly what is UNICRI. UNICRI works with basically under the same umbrella of the UNODC in Vienna. You must know the UNODC much more than UNICRI. We are very small, and we are one of the 6 research and training institutes funded by the General Assembly to carry out independent research and training for the member states. So we do not receive any money from the Secretariat, because we need to be independent, only a contribution from the host country, which is Italy, because the UN receives a contribution from the generally, at least a contribution from the country that is hosting it. So UNICRI's mandate is crime prevention and administration of criminal justice. And we have been following the EPPIC project as advisory board member, because of our mandate. What we do, we assist member states in building capacity to advance understanding of crime-related problems, foster just and efficient criminal justice systems, support the respect of international instruments and standards, and facilitate international law enforcement and judicial cooperation. I will speak about this project a little bit in a second. But first, let me tell you, we are carrying out now a project on preventing drug use among children and adolescents through supporting a stronger role of families. The purpose of the investigation, this is a pilot research study. We are trying to understand what are the needs and the gaps in 2 pilot countries, which is Italy, a developed country, and Tunisia as a developing country. And in this context, we are trying to understand what are the needs of the families and how these needs can be supported by better policies and better practices. So we are doing this within our anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism work. UNICRI has been working very effectively, I must say, in addition to a lot in countering violent extremism. We have currently a program funded by the UNOCT, which is the counterterrorism common strategy of the UN, and by the European Union in the Sahel Maghreb to prevent and counter radicalization. And with working in this field, we are working with communities and with families. We are working at the grassroots level to prevent radicalization, including radicalization in prison. We recently published this publication that I want to bring to your attention within our works, of course, in juvenile justice. We don't want to use this term juvenile, as you said yesterday, but the report looks at the counterterrorism laws and practices of two case studies countries, which are UK and Germany, and seeks to analyze the extent in which they comply with international juvenile justice and child protection standards. And the report also provides a number of generally applicable recommendations that should allow governments to strengthen their capacity to integrate international child rights standards into domestic counterterrorism frameworks. Of course, this is relating to counterterrorism, but with this program we are carrying out, we are seeing that there is a lot in common between counterterrorism work and drug use work. Many of the same family-related risk factors seen in drug addiction, crime and marginalization, struggles with the parenting role, social or mental issues within the family can be observed in the case of radicalization, as well as drug abuse. Drugs use is recognized as one of the factors that may influence the radicalization process, especially among youth, contributing to building tools for resilience and life skills, and the initiative also aims at preventing or overcoming negative circumstances that a child might try to escape by joining terrorist groups. What we are seeing with this project, which is, we only have a preliminary data, is that the needs of the families, I need to say that we did both surveys through direct questionnaires to services and to families. What we are seeing is that in some of the issues, families and practitioners converge. In some of the issues, families and policymakers are very distant. We interviewed policymakers, practitioners, and families separately. And we are looking at the data and seeing how, of course, maybe, it's also obvious that families and practitioners are going along the same, looking at the same problems. While there is a distance between what we see, of what the awareness of policymakers of what family needs to address substance use in children. So, coming back one moment to this publication, this was very interesting because we chose England and Germany because they have two different legislative frameworks, yes. But in both, we noticed that, and these are very well developed countries, we noticed that both of them did ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but both countries are still not implementing what the Convention wants. One of them is to make sure that the child that commits offense is processed through other channels than the adult criminal justice system. There are still a lot of non-compliance to that. And I would like to point out, I have very little time, I would like to point out that, of course, at the level of the United Nations, in the 90s, there were a lot of guidelines, best practices, following the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted by the General Assembly in 1989. The Havana Rules, adopted in 1990, rules for the protection of juveniles deprived of their liberty, the Riyadh Guidelines on the Prevention of Juvenile Delinquency, again for 1990, and the Tokyo Rules, United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for Non-Custodial Measures. But, of course, this is we didn't mention them because, I mean, these are the foundation of the common United Nations environment that all member states should follow. I'm bringing your attention to this because I think that the standards that you developed should not be underestimated in their potentials to be addressed not only to practitioners but also to policymakers, politicians, and your government members, as Günter has pointed out previously. I think that the standards you developed have an immense added value, which is based on all the previous guidelines and everything, but they are mostly based on the work that each team developed and on the cross-national studies and research that you put together, which is the very big added value of the program. The importance of working together and bringing everything to this particular objective. And the added value is that these guidelines, these standards are based on a bottom-up approach, meaning that you drafted them based on what the other partners brought to you from the interviews that they made with the inmates, with the children in the community and involved in, and with the practitioners. So I think that this is a big added value of the standards. And these standards, how long do I have?
One more.
And these standards should be absolutely put in practice. I think that this big effort made by the research, by this research that has just finished, should be absolutely brought forward through an intensive training. This is the moment in which the standards need to be put in each of the countries or through the help, the generous help of the European Union, put in practice. Because the standards, the way they are written and the way they were generated, to me, they look just like a ready-made module for training. This is what you have. You have already, it's already there. It's a already built module for training. Then, of course, you need to adapt it to the context, to the legislation. You need to adapt it to the language. But I think you have in your hands an incredible opportunity to bring these standards forward, because what you managed to do was to consolidate all the research work, which is not easy, in one concrete output that can be used very easily to provide the training. I don't know whether I have a little more time.
Not really.
Very little. Very good.
Not really.
Okay. I wanted to bring this little program we are carrying out because I also wanted to say that in this training, please, in this bringing the standards forward, please do not forget that the United Nations is involved in bringing forward the agenda for sustainable development 2030. And I think that your project falls, I try to envision which are the goals in the agenda that the project is falling into. I think the third, which is devoted to health, the fifth, gender equality, the 10th, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, and the 16th, of course, which is about peace, justice, and strong institutions. Apart from my presentation, I would like to also announce that we invited Professor Thom to a side event which we are organizing at the margins of the 63rd Commission on Narcotic Drugs in Vienna at the beginning of March. As you may know, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs is the most important for the United Nations appointment where all member states go and discuss what to do in this field. So it's very important, and it's also a moment in which there are a lot of important resolutions brought forward by member states, and a moment in which we can learn a lot of what is going on and tell member states that they are doing wrong things in some of the fields in which they are operating. So Professor Thom, we have had the honor to have her and discuss the EPPIC project, and I hope this will also be a very good opportunity for us to think about next year, maybe at the next commission, to work with the member states involved, to work on, and of course the experts, and think about bringing forward a resolution on this particular aspect based on the results of the research on the EPPIC project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, is that a question?
I was going to say something
Okay.
about that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have decided to disobey the chair because he announced that Cynthia would be speaking now. We've decided that we will not follow your suggestion that I will be speaking first. And the first thing that I'm doing is hold up this box. There's only 3 forms in it.
We were waiting for
Only
the end.
3. So, while I'll be speaking, the doors of this room will be locked. And you will not be able to leave this room until all of you have completed your form and filled up this box to the level that it should have. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we decided that it would make much more sense that Cynthia would speak after me, because we've been talking a little bit about the follow-up of this meeting, of this project. And Cynthia is the right person to sit with you and talk about the opportunities that might exist with a little bit of help of the European Union and the Commission and the CJS. So that's why I'll be addressing you first. Also, because Heino and I are getting pretty nervous, because our plane leaves from Heathrow around 3 o'clock, and it's a long distance from here to get to Heathrow. So Heino and I just said, we will leave you as soon as I have finished my talk. Sorry about that. Now, Chairman, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and an honor really for me to have the opportunity to share with you a few reflections at the end of the day, at the end of this project. And the first thought, the first reflection I have when I think about this project is that it was really great, really fantastic to have the opportunity, to have the funding, to have the administration, to have the leadership, etc., for this project. I think it is right that we are, in a way, grateful for the Commission to have given us the opportunity to run this project. It's great also that the Commissioner himself, at a number of opportunities, has spoken, has referred to this project. That's not self-evident, that's not automatic. The fact to be that this project has been going, the fact that the Commissioner himself, at the highest level of the European Union, has spoken about this project at a number of occasions, to me symbolizes, to me illustrates the fact that at the highest European level there is an interest, there is an engagement of the political leadership, the scientific leadership in this subject of young people coming into contact with the criminal justice system because of drugs. That is not logical, or that is not logical, that means something. It is a real interest, it's a real engagement of the European Union, of the Commission in this subject. And to me, it also symbolizes an interest of the Commission, of the leadership of Europe, to say this is an important issue. This is an important issue to look at the fact, what are we doing with these young people whom in the old days we used to lock up, right? I remember personally when I was a bit younger in gymnasium, one of my friends, like me, like all of us, used to smoke hashish, marijuana. Now, he was not as careful, maybe, as I was, but he was caught by the police. Possession of marijuana in these days was a serious issue, so he was taken by the police, put in a cell overnight. The end of the story is that he ended up in the prison, right? For nothing. For nothing. And I can tell you that that meant a big trauma for my friend. And today, it would be unthinkable in Holland, even in Austria, and a number of other countries that are represented here, that it would happen again. But still, we've made a big development in Europe to give priority to care, to treatment, instead of punishment, right? That is what this project is also all about. It's not also all about, it's basically about from punishment to treatment and care. That, I think, is the essence of this project. That's the essence of the project. We are, with that idea, in an international stream, in an international trend that is supported by the United Nations, by the Narcotics Control, by the, what is it called again? The NCD, by the UNOCD, by World Health Organization, by the EMCDDA. Now I'm looking, for instance, at, although the single convention in the 60s already gave the opportunity to countries, gave the discretion to countries not to send people to prison, but to send people to treatment institutions. That provision was hardly utilized, but again, as I said, slowly the international trend is to support treatment instead of punishment. In 2016, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs adopted a resolution supporting the collaboration of public health and justice authorities in pursuing alternative measures to conviction or punishment for appropriate drug-related offences of a minor nature. In 2018, the UNODC and World Health Organization published a report on treatment and care for people with drug use disorders in contact with the criminal justice. It has taken a long time for the international community to say this sort of things. Now, that's the international trend. But let's not kid ourselves. That's not the national practice yet everywhere. We heard yesterday from Jacek saying that in a country like Denmark, in a country like Poland, we are stepping back, going towards punishment for possession of drugs. I'll get to this particular country where we are being hosted so nicely in a moment. And as Jacek demonstrated or said so nicely, there's many good reasons not to send young people to prison for drug offenses. I've seen many prisons in my life. I've spoken to many prisoners in my life. And seldom, really seldom, did I have the impression that the stay in a prison meant a change, a positive change in the life of that prisoner. The majority, and I think I'm preaching to the converted if I say that for the majority of people in prisons, this means a deterioration, a negative event in the life. Huh?
Trauma.
A trauma. I don't have to speak about that any longer because, as I said, I'm preaching otherwise to the converted. Now, again, as I said earlier on, let's not kid ourselves. Denmark, the example, Poland, the example. But across Europe, if we look a little bit wider, only 2 minutes. Nice.
Flight.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to quote from an article which was published recently in The Lancet, because I think what I referred to earlier, that let's not kid ourselves. Let's not think that this international trend is accepted everywhere. No. Punitive social policy combines the dismantling of the welfare state with the expansion of the penal state and its institutional correlates. Read that article by Michael Margaret in The Lancet, because I think that is the trend which we see in a number of European countries taking place. Growing numbers of vulnerable people are targeted by public authorities for so-called antisocial behavior, including seemingly irrepressible yet inexplicable search to sleep on pavements rather than beds, for instance. And we do see this illustrated in the numbers of people in prisons today. Although in Europe there is no big changes, the numbers are not increasing. There's a number of countries where the numbers are increasing. Belgium, for example, many countries in Eastern Europe. In this very country where we are, we have the highest number of people in prison per capita. In this very country, developed country, right? The UK prison population is on the increase and has been steadily rising for a number of years with no signs of decreasing. England and Wales, as a matter of fact, have the largest prison population of all countries in Europe. Betsy, I'm sorry.
I'm Scottish.
And if we take, sorry, Chair, because I think, would you mind a few more minutes? If you look into the prison, the situation gets even worse because there is an increasing lack of resources within the prison system to do anything which makes sense in this context. Read Nasrul Ismail. He has been looking at the impact of the macroeconomic austerity on prison health. And he says, what I see is longer waiting times to access prison health are becoming a regular occurrence. Prisoners are not being released from their cells. There's also a visible deterioration of the living conditions in prisons. Violence, bullying, and drug-taking incidents are increasing, making prisons far more dangerous as a place to live and work. That's the current situation in this country, and not only in this country. So, I'm trying to wrap up.
Please do so.
What has this project done within this context? This project to me has accumulated a significant amount of knowledge. We produced a wealth of knowledge in this field. How to make sure that this knowledge doesn't get lost. We'll talk about that when I've left this room. What this project also has done is it has developed a wealth of contacts as we are sitting here, as many of the people with whom you have been in touch. That network is an enormous resource. It's really an enormous resource, and it would be a shame to get that lost. Now, my chairman is going to be nasty, as I see, if I don't stop now. There's many opportunities to continue. Just one example. Continuing that network that you have created doesn't have to be expensive. Cynthia is going to speak a little bit about practical possibilities. I'll give you one practical possibility from my own experience, and then I'll stop, Jean-Paul. I am the chair of the Alcohol Policy Network in Europe. It was created also, Cynthia, as a direct follow-up to a European Union funded project on alcohol many years ago. And then we had the same feeling sitting in a room like this, saying it would be a pity if we wouldn't continue. So we said, okay, we'll establish the Alcohol Policy Network. I happened to become the chair. It doesn't cost anything. It, of course, needs a little bit of investment from anyone, from a few people, to run that, and it goes. And Cynthia is going to talk about practical possibilities also for a little bit of support. So, God bless you. It's an important project, and I was very pleased to be associated with this, having been in the prison setting for many years, having established many years ago the Health in Prisons project. And I think that's one of the linkages that I'm looking for when we talk about standards. Why don't we see to it that the standards are being sold, integrated in the Council of Europe, EMCDDA, World Health Organization Health Project, because that has to be done. You're a nice group together, but what is the weight of us? Let's see partnerships with these. Thank you, and sorry for taking so long. Daniel, let's get out.
And, sorry for being a timeline tyrant, but I think we need to move on to Cynthia. And Kees already introduced basically what she's talking about. Bye, Kees. Have a safe flight. Bye, Heino. Have a safe flight.
Yes, good morning. Now I have a lot of expectations about what I'm going to present. Just to introduce, I am a project officer, that means I was responsible for the follow-up from the beginning of EPPIC until now the end. And I will be supporting the project to say that all the results, what has been produced during this 3 years collaboration, would be available for the Commission, because the Commission would be using for policy development, but as well for practitioners. That means we support as well the dissemination of the results. What we see based on previous experience, and I am working on this agency for the last 13 years, is that networks are a live system. That means networks are collaborations between experts, and they would evolve. They would adapt. They would look for other opportunities. You have identified needs, and this would allow you to find solutions on how to improve and how to continue the collaboration. That means I think it's important to see how to sustain activities at national and at European level. And what I would do is I would give you an example that I don't know if you know the correlation network. Maybe put the hands up, those who know the correlation network. Correlation network was initially a project in the early 2003, 2004 they started. They had a second project, but to be a follow-up project, you need to identify areas that are very innovative, things that have not been done before. One of the things that is basic is that we are not allowed to find the same thing twice. That means you have to go a bit further than where you are now. That means you have to identify maybe a different target group, extending for new countries, or working in a different setting. That means these are the things that can happen. That means correlation had a second funding. And then they focus more on TB among drug users, on hepatitis C among drug users. They established a peer support group and mentoring that was discussed yesterday. And then they established a European network. To be an European umbrella network, you need to have partners in at least half of the member states, established members that work, and these are practitioners who are working on the different countries. And based on that, we have a specific funding that are operating grants that is to support European umbrella organizations. And correlation now is being funded, as you see, until next year. That means until 2022, we provide a year funding, and this is defined on the, following the mission and the statute of the network. They have an annual strategic planning, and based on that, we provide funding to them. But then there is other funding opportunities that are on the health-related programs. That means I'm working on the implementation of the health program. And this is specifically on health promotion, health security, support to health systems, and innovation on health. But there is as well the security program. The security program usually leads on issues related to drug, on drug supply and drug demand reduction. Health, and this is the responsibility of the G-Santé, only focus on health-related harm in community or in prison settings. And this is something that would be continued in the future. But you have as well the research program. The research program is the largest European funding for science development and innovation. But you have as well national funding coming from the EU. And we have very good examples where one country decided, I don't know, I now practice this best practice in few cities, and now I want to extend to more regions. And they adopted the European Regional Fund grants. And this is something that is national prioritization and investment. They just have to include on their multi-annual planning, and they can use European regional funds for scaling up the implementation. They could develop the training that you suggested, because you have now the standards. That means you just need to adapt to the needs of the country. And we have as well possibility of funding of non-EU countries. That means we have the external agency and the DEFCO, that's Development and Cooperation, who provides funding for non-EU countries on the key priority issues that are focused to the EU. All the funding mechanisms are available in one common platform, that is the CJS portal. Everything that is open and for application on projects and on tenders is available there. To have access to that, you just need to create your own profile. And then you would have an email that gives you access and you could apply, but you have to be established in one of the EU countries for those that are EU related projects like the health program, or RTD has as well agreement with non-EU countries. For DEFCO, you have to be established in one of the non-EU countries. That means here you have the different programs that have funding available on different areas, not only on health, sometimes on justice, sometimes, I don't know, on education, and there is several calls several times a year. Like under the health program, we have this new website because we are just launching the new work plan 2020 that would be available for call for proposals on the coming months. We have as well a newsletter that you can sign up, and then you are notified about new developments, what are the key priorities, what are the open opportunities. And you have the research as well, have usually a quite interesting application that this would be a way of sustaining the network, because the coast is open now, and if you have a research area that you would like to further study, further develop, you can apply for maintaining at least the meetings, like supporting the travel, supporting publications. It's like really for research development. But it's a competitive process. That means it's not that you apply and you get. You get comments, you have to revise the proposal, but finally you could succeed if you apply and you fulfill the criteria. And then for structural funds, I will not go down, but this is national prioritization. That means for that, you need to identify who is responsible for the implementation of regional funds at national level, and they have to define that working with youths on the security level, reducing the harm for drugs is one national priority. It's part of their social inclusion, social inequalities policy. And then they could have specific funding for this area. Now, how the priorities are set, because sometimes you get an annual work plan, you say, but how do they decide what is going to be funded? We do not decide ourselves. It's not the Commission. He makes a proposal, and this is discussed with the member states who participate. One of the sources of the priorities is this best practice portal. In this best practice portal, it's any best practice that was assessed, evaluated, could be concluded, introduced in this best practice portal. And here is the criteria, and several of these criteria were used, I think, for the development of the standards and for the assessment of your own best practice survey. Like then, once or twice a year, there is a meeting with the member states, and they prioritize the priorities that have been